Welcome back to Uncivil Law, where we slice through the noise and serve up legal truth. Today, we're diving into a tale that's equal parts drama, social media madness, and legal showdown. Imagine this. You're out for a night in Chicago's River North. Maybe you've had one too many, and suddenly you find yourself escorted out of the bar. Now, what do? You could let it go, maybe sleep it off. Or if you're like TikToker Julia Reel, you whip out your phone, fire up that TikTok, and tell the whole world that you were physically assaulted by the bar security. But here's the twist. What if reality was a little less, shall we say, cinematic? Julia's TikTok video didn't just catch a few eyeballs. It went viral. She painted a picture of being manhandled and thrown downstairs, all by the big bad bouncers at Hubbard Inn. But like every good story, there are two sides. Hubbard Inn wasn't about to let this one slide. They pulled their own receipts in the form of security footage that, according to them, showed a very different story. So what happens when a viral TikTok meets cold hard evidence? Buckle up, because we're about to dissect a case that's as much about legal principles as it is about power and peril of social media. So what happened? Julia Reel claims that one fateful night at Hubbard Inn, she was manhandled by bar security staff. According to her viral TikTok video, because of course, why deal with things privately when you can broadcast it to millions, Julia was grabbed, dragged, and shoved down a flight of stairs by a security guard. She even went so far as to say she slammed her head on the ground. Pretty shocking, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Hubbard Inn, of course, wasn't just going to lie down. Oh no, they apparently did what was unthinkable to Julia. They actually reviewed their own security footage. And guess what? The footage told a very different story. According to Hubbard Inn, not only did their staff not manhandle Julia, but actually escorted her out quite calmly. No grabbing, no shoving, and certainly no flying downstairs. In fact, the footage seems to show Julia walking out on her own with her dignity and skull intact. Now, this isn't just a case of he said, she said. This is now a full-blown legal battle with real-world consequences both for Julia Reel and Hubbard Inn. And it's a perfect example of how a little social media clout can spiral out of control. But before we dive into the legal nitty-gritty, let's take a closer look at the claims and the evidence. First up, we need to talk about defamation, folks. It's one of those legal terms that sometimes gets thrown around, especially when someone's feelings get hurt online. But what does it really mean? And more importantly, how does it apply to our new TikTok friend, Julia Reel? Defamation in its simplest form is when someone makes a false statement about you that harms your reputation. In this case, Hubbard Inn is alleging that Julia Reel's TikTok video was not just a misrepresentation of the facts, but an outright lie that damaged their business. And here's the kicker. Under Illinois law, statements that accuse someone of a crime are considered defamation per se. That means Hubbard Inn doesn't even have to prove they were harmed because the law will assume it. Julia didn't just imply that she had a bad time. She outright accused Hubbard Inn staff of committing a crime. According to her, they physically assaulted her. Now, if you're going to make an accusation like that, you better have some rock-solid evidence, perhaps actually based on reality. But Julia's got a problem: the security footage. This footage, according to Hubbard Inn, shows that Julia's version of events is about as accurate as a tarot card reading from Stevie Wonder. She was, in fact, actually calmly escorted out, not violently thrown downstairs. Hubbard Inn isn't just mad, they're suing. They claim that Julia's TikTok led to canceled reservations, bad reviews, and even threats of violence against their staff. And they're asking for over $30,000 in damages so far. But this lawsuit isn't just about the money, it's about reputation. Hubbard Inn is a well-known establishment in Chicago, and they're not going to let some TikTok influencer smear that name without a fight. So, what are Julia's defenses? Well, she's got a few options, but they're not exactly slam dunks. Let's break down what she might try to argue and why it probably won't hold water. When you're on the receiving end of a defamation lawsuit, you've got a couple defenses you can throw out the wall and try to see what sticks. Julia Reel can try to explore these options, but honestly, they're more like Hail Marys than solid legal strategies. First up, there's the classic truth defense. If what you say is true, then it's not defamation. Simple, right? Well, in this case, not so much. The problem for Julia is that Hubbard Inn has security footage that directly contradicts her story. Unless Julia can somehow magically provide evidence out of a hat that no one else has seen, that truth defense looks pretty shaky. Next, there is the defense of "this is just my opinion, man." That's where one person tries to argue that what they say was not a statement of fact, but just personal opinion. Here's the problem. Julia didn't say, "I feel like I was being manhandled." She outright said, "I was manhandled." There's a big difference between saying you feel unsafe and accusing someone of a specific crime. Courts aren't going to buy the opinion defense when you make an actual factual claim about someone's specific actions. Julia might also try to argue that she didn't act negligently or with malice. Maybe she genuinely believed she was being assaulted in some way. But even if she believed it, the facts just don't support her version of events. And let's be real, when you're broadcasting to thousands of people, you have a responsibility to make sure what you're saying is at least based on some kind of reality. Crying "I don't know" isn't exactly going to get her off the hook, particularly in this situation because, of course, she would know because she was there. So with these defenses looking about as solid as a house of cards in a windstorm, where does that leave our friend Julia? Well, it leaves her in court, facing potentially expensive judgment. But in this case, it won't just be about the money. It's about the message it will send to influencers and businesses alike. Let's take a look at the bigger picture. Social media, love it or hate it, is here to stay. But while it's great for keeping up with that latest dance craze or sharing those cute cat videos, it's also a breeding ground for misinformation, and as we see here, potentially devastating defamation. Julia Real's case is a perfect example of how the power of social media can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, platforms like TikTok give ordinary people a voice and a platform to share their experiences. On the other hand, that same power can be used to spread false information that can ruin businesses and lives. In the old days, if you had a bad experience at a bar, you might tell a friend. But today, with the click of a button, you can broadcast your version of events to millions of people. And if you're not careful, if you exaggerate, or at worst, you lie, you might find yourself in the crosshairs of a defamation lawsuit. This case also highlights the responsibility that comes with having a platform. Julia might have thought she was just sharing her experience, but when your audience is in the hundreds of thousands, you've got to be a little bit more careful. The court isn't exactly going to care how many likes your video got. In the end, they're going to want to care about whether what you said was true. So what can we learn from all this? It's simple. Think before you post. And if you're going to accuse someone of an actual crime, you better be able to back it up with something, based perhaps on reality. But in the end, the truth will come out, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of it. So what is the legal takeaway from all this? It's pretty straightforward. Defamation isn't a game. And if you think you can just say whatever you want online without consequence, think again. Julia Real's latest story might have made her a viral TikTok sensation, but for all the wrong reasons. And now she's facing real-world consequences. Defamation law exists to protect people and businesses from false statements that can cause serious harm. And while the internet may at times still feel like the Wild West, the law is, of course, the law, internet and all. If Hubbard Inn can prove that Julia's statements were false and they suffered damage as a result, she could be on the hook for a lot more than just her TikTok fame. We are talking potentially serious financial damages, not to mention the hit to her own reputation. And all this could have been avoided if she had just thought twice before posting. This case is a wake-up call for anyone who thinks they can use social media to vent their frustration without considering consequence. Words have power. And in the age of social media, they can spread like wildfire. But when those words are false, the legal system is here to put out the flames. But what do you think? Let's take a few moments to chew on a few questions this wild saga leaves with us all. First, do you think Julia Real was somehow genuinely mistaken, or is this a classic case of someone letting their social media clout get to their head? Second, how far should businesses go to protect their reputation in the age of viral videos? Should they try fighting fire with fire, or should they rather let the internet do its thing? And finally, what's the bigger risk these days? Getting tossed out of a bar or getting dragged through the mud online? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop your comments below and let's get this debate going. Because if there's one thing we've learned from this case, it's that in the court of public opinion, everyone's got something to say. Until next time, I've been Uncivil Law, and remember, keep it uncivil out there.